That was awesome. My viewers on the channel were very excited about it. They wanted to know how much of it was improvised.
All of it. I did load a sequence into the Key Step Pro ahead of time, which is just like a big D minor 9 chord. And I programmed some of the beats into the 5 scenes of the WMD Metron sequencer. But the rest of it was all, and all the pitch stuff is my standard trick of sampling an LFO and running that through a scale quantizer and then messing with the frequency of the LFO. And you get these non-random but non-repeating melodic patterns.
Well, excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. That's Enemy Sender. There we go. Awesome. Mike is also director of sound production. Am I getting that right?
Music and production, bachelor's degree at Lamont School of Music.
Yep. He's a lot of things here at Lamont School of Music.
Recording, music and production, bachelor's degree, Lamont School of Music.
Yep, I think so. Awesome.
Look at that. Bam. Yeah, somebody in the chat said that if this was my professor, I would have finished college. So that's pretty good.
That says something.
Yeah.
You can still come, still taking applications.
You can still come. You can still, you can make something of yourself. So,
And use the code BEN10 to get 10% off your admission to Lamont School of Music.
yeah, if you put in Ben, BEN 10 at Perfect Circuit, you get 10% off anything there. Well, I don't know. I'm sure some brand isn't going to allow it. And you'll also get 10% off your tuition to any school.
Exactly. It's a really great deal.
Car companies as well.
Exactly.
It's really great.
Just say it at the lot.
Casinos.
Exactly.
Yeah. Crypto.
All McDonald's except for ones that at airports for some reason.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Hi Ben. I should probably introduce myself to your stream and these folks as well. My name's David Soto. I go by Sign Mountain. I run the Colorado Modular Synth Society, and I'll be hosting the Q&A, or at least doing the queuing. And so, yeah. Thanks so much, Ben, for coming down here and doing this sort of impromptu pop-up Q&A with us.
Thanks. That's where I'm headed now. Just pop-up Q&As. I did one yesterday in the desert in Utah. There wasn't anybody there, but thanks for everyone coming out. That's really awesome. And the University of Denver has been enormously accommodating, all the way to like picking up the food from the DoorDash driver. And I mean, it's just like I was saying, I go to venues and I'm just like, can I have a table? And 2 hours later, I'm like, maybe an extension cord. And here you guys have made it all seamless. So thank you for having me.
They're good people. Yeah. Good people. Yeah. So you're talking about being on the road. So let's talk about that real quick. How long have you been on the road?
Like 20 something days, all car, no plane, from Atlanta to LA, and then making my way up here. But I stopped at places like New Orleans, and I spent a bit of time in the oil fields in Texas because that was like kind of an odd, and just basically doing videography of abandoned malls and things like that. And then I will be scoring it all with the Poly and Play, because basically a couple different companies were like, "Hey, do you want to come to NAMM?" And I was like, "No," and they're like, "Well, let's work something out." And so that was kind of my pitch. Is if you, I'll film a bunch of things that I find in an aesthetic that comes together, and then I'll score it with the Play, which I'm super happy to do. And honestly, it's an excuse to make music. So
so that's cool. And so for a few folks that might not have caught on to the latest news about the Poly and Play, it's sample-based groove box. So when you're saying you're going around doing video, you're also grabbing all your sound sources from there as well?
Yeah, like one of them, it was kind of funny because I obviously have like field recording equipment and stuff, and I'm pretty anal retentive about it all. And I was just like, what if it just came from the camera's microphone? Mm-hmm. Like, what if I didn't make a big deal out of it and just went lo-fi? And so, like things like even in New Orleans, like street drummers and things like that, just picking up things that I could make loops of later and kind of build from that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that all from your fancy camera, or is some of it coming from your phone, or is it like a mixture of both?
most of the audio recording has either come from like the Zoom H8 or or just my Sony A7 IV, which went into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wonder what that sounds like.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know, maybe it got destroyed and I had to get another one. But yeah, which is like, one of those, anybody who's into photography, that's like gore. It's like it's like seeing a car accident, like seeing one of those like with sand and seawater on it.
But to your defense, if I understand the story right, you had it in a sort of safe place with
Yeah.
people. It's just the ocean wanted it more than you did.
The ocean wanted it more than I did, and I'm really lucky that always insure your gear. That's a good message for all of this, is like insure your gear. And I mean, I still had a massive deductible, but also I'm just really lucky I was able to find another Sony A7 IV, because that camera's really difficult to find right now, just with the chip shortage and everything. And so I was able to finish the video. I mean, I'm not. It's not a profitable endeavor anymore, but it's still the passion. So
Awesome. We have some people have sent some questions in, but I figured I'd start off with a few of my own questions.
sure.
And I thought if it's cool, we can talk a little bit about modular synths, because that's where I come from. That's kind of my focus for the group and everything, and one of the reasons we brought you out here.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, we can talk about other synth stuff and video stuff as well. So, can you kind of just give us like a rundown of like how your modular synth journey began, and where are you now in that journey?
So in 2016, maybe 2016, Adler Planetarium in Chicago. I believe it's like the biggest planetarium in the country, and they also have a really large, impressive science lab that does everything from climate change research to the things that you would normally expect out of a planetarium. They do films, and they produce a lot of films that other planetariums show on their screen, and I scored a few of them. And they were very, like the first one I scored was called Cosmic Wonder. And that one, I was like, since this is about like the history of astronomy, I'd really like to just write kind of old Christian music. And they were like, and I was like, no, like Bach and, Tallis and things like that. And I ended up recording like a choir. And after that, like anything I did, I was just very open about ideas. And so the second one I did, called Planet 9, which was like made alongside them discovering Planet 9, which was a bitch, by the way. Like making a film about something that is scientifically active means you have to constantly change everything as it's going. So anyway, I was like, I'd really like to make this entire score with logic gates. And they're like, whatever, sure, go. I had no idea what I was saying. Like, I was just like, this will be easy. I cheated a little bit, but most of like the song structures were made with logic gates, and I just took the budget and went directly into modular with it. And this was before I even had a YouTube channel. So, I wasn't getting a bunch of shit for free. And so, that's how it began. I was very excited about it. I was very excited about being able to plug things other than MIDI cables and audio ins and outs into audio gear. Like immediately one of the things I was doing was like, hooking up a photo sensor and a laser pointer, and then having that modulate things in the modular and stuff like that. And it became very, very evident very quickly that this is why I like a modular synthesizer. It's because I can just have it do whatever I want, essentially, with any other object in the house, if you're, if you can solder it, I suppose. So.
Yeah, if you can solder it. Wait, so just to pause right there what were those first modules you got?
I think the Mother 32, when that came out, it was like right when that one came out. Maths, of course. Rings. I think Clouds was pretty new at the time. These are all, I feel like almost like a boomer being like, oh, dude, Rings had just come out. World War II just ended. It was like, So the mutable stuff was blowing my mind. And I'm like, so sad I mean, I understand
Yeah.
Emily doing what she wants, which is a beautiful thing in its own, being an artist and not, not being the CEO of a company. But yeah, I really am bummed that her creativity isn't going to be a tool I can use anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I still use all of her things, but so Mutable played a huge role, and Rings played a massive role for me, which is so funny because it's such a simple module, but it's such a complicated module at the same time, and it's the one that I have not heard anything like. Maths and Rings are the two things that I haven't seen anything emulate properly. And maths, I mean, you could use that as an oscillator, you could use that as so many different things, and then Richard Devine could come to your house and use it as like 500,000 more things that you didn't even realize, which is what he does if you, so.
Yeah. Well, it does say something about those, when you're talking about rings and clouds, we still know what that is.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, that legacy will probably live on for as long as people are patching things in.
And they're open source, which is great.
Which is awesome,
That means people can continue making them. I mean, that's generous, but almost at the same time, I guess if I were to make modules and then not continue to sell them, I would love for them to be open source too, because that way, generations of
Yeah.
they could keep, and people have modified them too. Like you have the Supercell clouds or whatever. I don't think I've ever bought a modified one, but
Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah, and then all the firmware updates or alternative firmwares. So you got started back then. You got started with the Rings in the Clouds, blew your mind, and then how far did you start to really go down the rabbit hole with modular? As far as like is everybody else like endless hours looking at modules? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I have more than I use. I actually did a video where I went through everything, because so many people are like, what kind of modules do you like? Which ones should I get? And I hate answering that question, because it's like you should build your own, because that's the best part of the journey.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that feels like you're gatekeeping a little bit. Like, why don't you just figure it out for yourself? Like, it's kind of this. So I don't want to rob anybody of that, customization by recommending them something, because I was in that same place. I was just like, I was a turn up to it, and I was just like, what should I get? What should I get? And I was asking everybody, and luckily I kind of just went my own route. I don't even remember the question. How big? Oh yeah, how far down the rabbit hole am I? My modular is too big, I think, and so I literally I don't use 60% of them more than once in a great while. And then there's things like the Disting that I never use, just because the interface is painful, and I hate to say it, but it's it's a powerful module. If I had a smaller module, I would definitely use it. But when I have something that does what it does in a different module form factor, then I might as well unplug it.
Well, how much how much HP you're at right now?
Oh man, I kind of stopped counting. It was I mean, it's it's like a curved unit. This guy Brock, EuroRackModularCase.com, I believe, he designed the rack. He's in northern Florida, and met him in the middle of Georgia to pick it up, and for my newest rack. Before that, I was always building my own, and every 6 months having to expand on it and stuff. I'm not sure how many HP I'm at now. I mean, I have 3 power sources in it, so it's pretty big. But
I think it gives us an idea when you don't even know how much you have.
Yeah, I think after your third or fourth row, you're just I don't care.
Why are you counting? Yeah.
Yeah.
that's just really bragging.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I mean, what about now? So I think you just mentioned you don't use it that much, but are you feeling like you have to force yourself to do it? Or are you kind of using it just for giggling, or is it some sound shaping idea that comes in your mind?
It's kind of an idea factory, right? It's kind of like you could just sort of sit down and look at it, and you don't have any ideas in your head, and you just sort of have, I guess you have patching ideas, you don't have necessarily musical ideas, because the musical idea is going to be kind of a pain to execute there. And it's, I started as a jazz musician, so sitting down at a modular synth is very different than how I would normally, write something just by sitting on a piano. So it probably, I would say, as an idea machine is where I use it the most. And probably as far as the future goes, I really like building like smaller setups to take upstairs, if that makes any sense. Like sometimes having like a walled garden is actually a nice thing. It kind of forces you to be a little bit more creative. And like I was saying earlier at WMD, like I really wish that I could just take things and move them around. I wish there weren't screws. I wish that you could just open up a lid or something and take a module off and put it here and plug it in really fast and just change your workflow depending on what you want to do at that time. That would be really nice. But, I'm not, it's modular synths are amazing and it's great that you could do that in the first place, but I kind of wish I could do that every session. Just like move a couple things over. It's like, oh, if this maths was a little bit closer to this quad VCO, the form factor would make a difference, because I think I'm looking way more into that now that I'm a YouTuber and a consultant for different companies and stuff. I'm starting to see the power of the UI and especially with things like Polyon, one of my favorite companies, like they own the UI. Like they've got it down. Arturia is another company that is an amazing UI on that KeyStep Pro. That you could just sit down and you love working on it, even though there's probably a bunch of other things that kind of do the same thing. So
Yeah, I feel like that's a common thing I'm hearing from a lot of people who've been into Eurorack for a while, especially people who've bought a lot of Eurorack or have gotten to a point where they have a full case, that now they want to downsize and like you said, the limitation is kind of helping you create stuff. I'm hearing that more and more from people wanting to make A, more portable stuff, and B, like stuff to not have all the options.
I mean, getting into modular in the first place, usually the last thing on your mind is like, I really want to, I'm just really interested in a good aesthetic UX design that's just snappy and inviting. No, we're a bunch of dorks. And so, we just want as many specs as we could get in as low HP in a lot of cases, and which makes some things like the disting sound like such a great idea. We're like, dude, it's like 2 HP or whatever, 4 HP, and it does all these things, but do you use it? I guess in a pinch, but things like that. I feel like this entire thing has just been me crapping on the disting.
Yeah,
but, it is a cautionary tale of a module, everyone.
Exactly. But on the other end, you have something like maths, which is
right. Yeah, and maths, you don't have to memorize anything with maths, which I really like too. I love things where you don't have to memorize things, where you don't have to ever pull up a manual or be like, what do I have to hold down this button? It goes into this mode. Maths is just there, and it's powerful in so many different ways. But it's a bit of a phenom, right? Like, are we ever going to get another thing? I mean, I hope we do. I hope we have another maths level module.
Someone out there right now is saying Rampage.
Yeah,
right. But so, I don't know.
Yeah, but in maths, I think it's worked. It's the best-selling module of all time, isn't it?
It's up there.
I mean, unless like the Neutron or something, just because
for
of price point.
For a long time, it was like the most popular module in modular grid, but I think Platts is up there.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
so another multifunction.
Yeah,
Swiss Army knife of a module.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. So, but one thing. So you were talking about jazz. One thing I think that I find in modular interesting that has a relationship with jazz is this idea of breaking this normal composition, this idea of Western composition. How do you connect with modular and do you see a relationship with the way people create music on these things in jazz?
I feel like if I were pigeonholed as a modular user or a synth user, it would be generative melodies and things like that. And the reason I do that is not because I'm impressed by what the modular could generate, but it's if you're into modal harmony and things like that, like having something play in one scale and sitting down at a piano next to it or at a guitar next to it, you can really kind of bring it into outer space and bring it into a sad place or a happy place, or depending on how long you've been playing music, whatever you want to describe. And the modular is just sort of your robotic friend that just sort of keeps time and something else. And so, that I feel like that's my relationship with it. If I were to think about it from a jazz perspective, I don't think of it. I mean, we just watched somebody do an amazing improvised performance here, whereas I don't really see it as an improvising thing for myself. Just because the fluidity of a guitar or a piano in comparison to something where you're plugging a bunch of things into one another and having to keep track of where they are. That this is much more rigid, even though it's called modular. It is much more rigid than just sitting down an instrument. Like that's the ultimate way to express yourself, right? Is just learn to play an instrument like it's an appendage, and then speak the language of it and hope somebody else likes it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can argue that's what's going on with modular. That people are learning how to play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hoping people like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of them are doing a great job.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so what about let's move on to other kinds of gear. So you get a lot of gear for free, but even if you didn't, like you love
Sure.
gear anyhow. So
Yeah, before that, before anybody was sending me anything in my YouTube channel, I still had like a semi truck to move my house. It's just I've been hoarding gear all my life.
So talk about that journey, about like getting into like other kinds of synths and samplers and stuff like that.
I mean, I think my first synth was I was in a band when I was a kid, and I was the guitarist, and the drummer was kind of lazy and not that good, and I was like playing his drums and learning how to play his drums. And I was, the first drums I ever listened to was like Buddy Rich. I saw him on the Muppets, and I remember I was like, whatever that guy's doing, I love that guy. And I was like 5 years old, and that was the first music I ever organically listened to, because as you would be lucky enough, my grandfather, who I lived with, had a bunch of Buddy Rich records. And so that was like my initial idea of what drums, this like heavy swing, heavy, very virtuosic, masturbatory drumming, like the I don't even know, for anybody who's not familiar with Buddy Rich, it's like the Steve Vai Van Halen of jazz drums, right? And I mean, nobody's ever done it better than him, but so by the time I got my hands on like a DR660 or something when I was 16, I was just like, well, I want to make it even better than Buddy Rich. I want to make it sound even like crazier than a human can make. And so that, led to my involvement in breakcore, I guess, or, whatever you want to call that genre, IDM or something, because like that's what I was obsessed with, is just creating these walls of drum madness that, every now and then would maybe come back into beat or something.
Yeah, that's cool. And then what else? What other gear was like? Also?
Oh yeah. So I think with my first multi-tracking, I used. Whenever I talk about like gear I used to use back in the day, especially now after just coming back from NAMM, because I feel like that's every conversation at NAMM. They're like 1-inch tape, a Marshall M1005. Man, those were the days. And yeah, every guy with the blonde hair that comes down to here and the. Anyway, so I used a karaoke machine that I borrowed from a friend, and I used to just flip the tapes to like do that. And then eventually, I got a 4-track and bought a Korg X3 maybe. That may have even been. I think I bought a Korg X. I think it was a Korg X3. That was my first workstation, and I mean, well, I'll be honest, I bought off a crackhead who's just selling like I grew up in South Chicago, so it was like, some guy who bought this like really powerful keyboard workstation because he thought that it would be, a good way to get into like making rap, and then it just ended up in my hands for, $100 or something. And so I had a TB303 from like a straight up, $50 TB303, where I was like, oh yeah, this thing might be powerful someday. Yeah, I was lucky enough to never jumped into an 808, though I wasn't born early enough. So
no, yeah. Well, I mean, now you can get a cheaper one.
Yeah.
But
Right. And then I think over the years it just kind of grew, and I think I had my first like professional studio in like 2008 or something, maybe 2007, 2008, and a lot of that was paid for with like advertising money from like writing music for ads, because I didn't really know. I'd get like a big check and then just be like, well, I'm gonna buy shoes and gear, and that's that's what you do, right? When you have money, because I had no idea. But yeah, so and then once I had the YouTube channel, it's funny. One of my first motivators for having a YouTube channel was like, yeah, maybe like people watch it, and I could like piggyback it off my music career a bit, and I'll get sent a bunch of free gear. And now it's to the point where a lot of times I'm just buying gear secretly, like just because I don't want to be indebted to a company or something like that, because then I feel bad, and I want to be as honest as possible, and I want to be able to shit on the disting and things without being like, I'm so sorry.
You're not going to get anything free from Expert Sleepers.
Yeah, right.
No,
Yeah.
You're on their list.
Yeah.
That's so when you're getting all this gear and stuff, like, who are you looking at? What are your inspirations, and where are you getting your advice on what to get? This is pre-YouTube, so
yeah. That's a difficult one, because I feel like I was my head was always all over, like just sort of listen. But I got a lot of advice from like touring with Dillinger Escape Plan, and like actual people were like teaching me ways to improve the sound of guitars in a mix or something like that, and then I would apply that to a distorted synthesizer or something, and that would actually be like, oh wow, that kind of works universally. I think I just always kind of had a nice relationship with other musicians just from touring and things like that. And I've been lucky enough to just spend enough time in a car or a bus with other musicians to where those ideas would kind of fester. And I think by the time I was making a living off of it, I was treating inspiration like it was ingredients in a recipe. Like I think I was like, I better not listen to this artist all the time, because I'm going to go in that direction entirely. And then knowing where my weaknesses and strengths are. I think I've said this on a stream I've done a lot of streams in the last week, and it's kind of insane. But yeah, I said this in another stream where, like, machine drum, for example, I love Travis to death. One of my best friends in the world. I am obsessed with his music. If I could make music like him, I would, but I can't. It's just not in my bones. I can't do it. And so I have to limit the amount of machine drum I listen to, because I can't be that inspired by it, because I know it'll lead me into this dead end where, like, I'll try and be, I don't know what you would call it, like funky and futuristic and jukey, and I can't do that. It's just, it's always a failure, at least for me. I don't know. Maybe you guys would love it. I doubt it. But yeah. So.
Yeah. So you're actively, like, making sure you're not listening to one artist or style too much.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to like gospel. I listen to stuff so outside of what I'm making, or I listen to just like the car, just like listen to. A lot of times I'll just put on like noise canceling earphones and listen to nothing, because I work in audio, so my ears are always like the number one used, I guess, sense. I almost said organ, but I suppose my lungs are probably a little more. My heart seems pretty active with me being here.
Yeah,
and everything.
yeah. Usually it's up there.
Yeah.
So what would be a surprising artist or song or style of music that your fans would be kind of surprised to hear that you listen to?
I mean, when I step into the shower, I listen to like gospel recordings. I listen to a lot of library music, like the stuff that back in like the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, these library companies, they would make these records that they would then just send out to like film companies and commercial companies. And if you wanted to use one of those songs, then you'd have to pay them, $100 or I don't know, whatever like rich white network executives did at the a bottle of bourbon and a cigar and we're set. No, but yeah, so that music is really interesting because it never really broke into, there's a couple things that broke, like Brian Bennett, if anybody's familiar with that, like his music kind of broke into our atmosphere of what we listen to. But a lot of stuff, I mean, they would just be like, they would pay a group of musicians or sometimes even one, they would, they'd give them a check for 50 grand and be like, go to the studio and make energy industry music. And you got 6 months. And then they'd churn that out with like, and it's the weirdest stuff you've ever heard. Yeah. It's like so bizarre. Make sexual music, make music that reminds you of the desert or of plants and just things like that, because their goal was to license it to a nature documentary or a sexy show or something like that. And so what you have is this like completely bonkers collection. And if you search for library music, there's still like blogs that just find things and people rip the records and put them up there. And
sounds cool. Yeah, I mean,
it's a gold mine of like really unusual stuff that you would only really think of hearing in a supermarket or something from the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even in anybody's like brains. Like what a supermarket sounded like in the 70s. I'm not that old, so I don't really. When I was 1, I went to the supermarket a lot for the last 3 months of that year. But yeah. Make sure my laptop doesn't die.
Yeah, that's cool. I did not know about that. That's awesome. I feel like I'm gonna be looking for library music about energy company themed music.
Kanye. I'm a Kanye defender. I listen to a lot of Kanye.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you mentioned Kanye earlier.
I love
today
Kanye. I have a pair of Yeezys. I'm all in. I went to high school with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I wasn't like
Does he
buddies
remember
with him.
you or?
No. We weren't like
that's too
buddies.
bad.
I think he was 2 years ahead of me. But I like remember him in proxy, but we didn't like smoke weed together or anything.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still.
Yeah.
That's a lot closer than some of us.
Who here has been closer to Kanye than
Yeah.
I?
Anybody step up if you're worthy.
Yeah.
Nope. No
That's
one
why
did.
I'm here, really, just to
drop that Kanye name drop.
Yeah, everyone just wants to hear about Kanye, what kind of backpack he had, and
Yeah, that's kind of why I brought you here.
right, yeah.
You figured me out for sure.
Yep.
So who else famous did you go to school with? I was joking. You grew up in Chicago. How many people do you know?
Yeah, I feel like I have a few weird famous stories. One of them would be Barack Obama. I met Barack Obama at one of my shows. No, I'm joking. I wish. When he was Barack Obama kind of came from the same neighborhood I came. Well, he was like active in the same neighborhood as a community organizer that I was from. And do you have an English course here that I could take so I could finish this sentence?
This is the school. This is the school of music.
No, and so he was running for state senator, and I remember on Facebook, Friendster. He had this is pre-Facebook.
You wanted to sound old.
Yeah,
You just dropped Friendster.
So I remember him having an account on Friendster, and I was like, oh, one of his employees or something, or one of his helpers or interns or something. And then I saw a thing in the newspaper that said, like, some politicians are using this new internet social media thing to reach out to voters. And so I wrote him a message, and I don't even remember what it was. It was, just like, hey, here's some of my questions. What would you do here? And this is when he was running for Illinois State Senate. And he responded and, wrote me a good paragraph, and I was happy with it, and I didn't want to bother him anymore, and so I left it there. And a few months later, he won the election as state senator, and he was smoking a cigarette, like illegally, off of there's like a blue line, red line area in Chicago where you could like switch lines, and he was off kind of on the edge smoking a cigarette, and I was holding a guitar, and I was just like going from like some studio back to like my house. And I saw him over there, and I walked over there, and I was like, Senator Obama. And I swear to you, turns around and goes, Ben.
No
right?
way.
And I was
No
like, and
way.
in my head, I was just like, he has
Dang.
no reason to remember that other than just being an amazingly good person at remembering faces and names,
I want to see what your Friendster avatar was. That was so.
Yeah,
It's like such a
I went to
close-up.
Glamour Shots and just gave them all the money that I had. Yeah, and I mean, he didn't remember anything else, but it was still, and I talked to him for like 10 seconds, but I was thinking to myself, like, you have to do that to be president, don't you? Like, you have to be one of those people where I could just like look into this audience and be like, Steve, right? I remember you from Twitter, or something like that. But yeah, that's my biggest famous person story, I think.
That's bigger than Kanye. Yeah. And it's
Slightly,
funny enough,
yeah.
you were closer to him smoking a cigarette
Right.
than Kanye smoking weed. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right, yeah.
we'll let everyone
Yeah.
do the math. Oh, that's cool. Now you know a few more YouTube famous folks and musicians.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions? You want any dirt on him?
Yeah, we want all the dirt. We can.
Venus Theory. He has a squirrel in a little box that he keeps with him at all times.
No, he was.
joking.
Yeah.
No, he was a really nice guy.
You saw him at NAMM with his little squirrel.
Yeah. Yeah, hidden.
Hidden.
Yeah. Adam Neely. He's great. I've talked to Adam a lot online. I got to meet him for the first time in the flesh, last weekend. I love Adam to death. He's one of those people where like on or off camera, talking to him is like talking to a music history museum. I don't even know what employee would know as much as he does. Like nobody really knows as much about music history and like the fundamentals of music theory than Adam. And he's also a really, really nice guy at the same time and really humble and stuff. So
Yeah. Is it nice to have these people that sit around, talk about not only music stuff but also this other life of being on YouTube?
yeah, some of them are going in reverse from me, which is interesting. It's interesting to have that parallel with people like Andrew Huang and Adam Neely. Obviously, they're way bigger on YouTube than I am, but they're kind of like, I want to be a musician now and I want to go on tour. And so now they're kind of breaking through into that and using YouTube as their sort of launch pad to do that, where I was doing it the opposite. I was like, I'm tired of touring, so I'm going to use that as my launch pad to get my first 5,000 subs or something like that, which, so it's interesting because I'm kind of like, suit yourself. I'm going to stay at home and talk to a camera. you go to the bathroom at the truck stop every day. And yeah.
Yeah. My next question is, how much do you miss touring?
No, yeah, I mean, this is amazing. I didn't have to bring anything. I didn't have to set much up. We're in a weird place post-COVID. I was wondering when I was going to like wrap. There are so many times in my life where I said, this is my last show ever. I'm never going to play another show. I mean, like, to the point where people who I've hired as tour managers and stuff they constantly make fun of me because they're like, Ben, is this your last show? Or is it the one tomorrow? Or is it, yeah. And I'm not sure why. I have no idea why I was so weird about that. But now I play like 2 shows a year and I just ask for more money, essentially. It's like, I was just like, I'll just ask for more money, and if they can afford it, then I'll play there. And one thing that I want to do in the future is play, if it's a big festival, play for free, but it's not free because the other part of the deal would be that they do their ticketing through me or through my own system. And that way I would be sort of taking the money away from Ticketmaster or from one of these like big tech companies that are kind of preying on, thank you, rather than asking for ridiculous amounts of money from a promoter who's just trying to make a good festival. So
Right. Yeah. We were talking. So for the folks that don't know, so we met up and we were over at.
We got history. We went to a Mexican restaurant for like 20 minutes, man.
Exactly. We go way back, way back. Why don't you have beans and rice with somebody?
Yeah.
But we went to WMD today and we were talking about the touring stuff, and then you also were mentioning your ideas about also kind of doing albums differently.
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about like your label, where you were doing your label, when that stopped, and what you're thinking about for the future of putting out music? Yeah,
I ran a nonprofit record label for 20 years, 19 years, almost at 20, Alpha Basic, and in the beginning, I think it was just one of those, like every electronic musician has a record label at some point. It just seems like it's part of the journey. Yeah, I guess, I'll make my own. But then it actually became a pretty serious thing because I was with a record label that collapsed. I ended up buying back all my own licenses because I realized that music licensing was paying a lot better than like sending CDs to a distributor to put in Best Buy or something like that. So I ended up buying back all my own licenses and then just releasing everything myself and funding it myself. And it worked out really well, like in financial terms, making close to 100% of your own royalties is mwah. But on the other end of that, I didn't get like the promotion. I never was cool, ever. Like, there's never a point in my career where I was like a hot commodity or like a cool musician to book. I was always just sort of, I felt old when I was like 25. It was like that guy, he's still releasing music. So so that went on and that was fine. And secretly over the years, I was kind of like, I can't wait till physical medium is dead entirely. Like I cannot wait until I don't have to make CDs anymore. I was out of vinyl a long time ago. I just sort of looked around and did some research on like what goes into vinyl, and I was like, okay, I'm not putting this into the putting this out anymore. But CDs still sold relatively well until COVID, and I like released an album almost as if it was like a COVID accompaniment album. Like, like here's something you could listen to for your first couple weeks of lockdown. And so naturally, anything that shipped outside of the U.S. got sent back from customs because, Italy, UK, like all these countries were closing down. And I lost like 14 grand or something on an album release that I had, funded myself, and I'd spent a lot of money on the album too. And so I had a major tour that year that got canceled and stuff. And then whatever happened with the Postal Service and Trump or whatever happened where it just slowed everything down. Remember when we didn't have mail for like 4 months? This is like a fever dream, isn't it? Like like saying this out loud, like, hey, does anybody remember when we didn't have mail? Yeah. Like that just seems like, anyway, so we didn't have mail, and UPS and FedEx was just way, like they boosted their prices up. And I was like, I'm going to lose money on everything, so I can't do this anymore. And I closed up shop. And immediately I was like, all right, now, so not only do I not have to worry about like, how much crap am I putting into the world plastic-wise and all that other stuff, but now I like albums, like why do we have to release things as 80-minute collections or 75-minute collections of music that have this permanence to them, to where I like give you this tombstone of a chapter of my life, and then you have that, and that's like a slice of my life that I can never change. Why don't we treat it like software? Like, why can't I have 2.0 and 3.0, and you could download the bookmarks of that or whatever you want to call them, and I could continue refining or getting rid of things or making them better, doing whatever I want. And an album can become this organism that grows with me, or whatever musician wants to do things this way. And so like since then, I mean, I have like, I had like a short jazz piano album, but then after that it was like everything just goes to GitHub and goes to an IPFS server and is on my website, and you could listen to every iteration of it, and if you want to branch it and do whatever you want with it, go for it. And that's where I'm at now. It's like, why? And not only that, but people are way more engaged, because the one big problem that we had, I think we were talking about this earlier, where you release an album every couple of years, and one thing I kept hearing was like, whoa, he's still making music? Where it was like, well, what do you think? I wasn't, it's not like, oh, I moved on to selling vans, and so that way people are just more engaged all the time, and they could always see what you're up to. And that's kind of what you need to do now that, the tech industry has become the music industry, and social media has essentially taken over whatever PR used to be before that.
Yeah. I think one of the other cool things about that idea you had is you said if someone likes a version, they can just go back to that version. Yeah. Which is cool. Also, it'd be amazing to see that album evolve. Yes. Through time.
For somebody starting out making music too, I think that's like watching an idea get refined. That kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't even call it inspiring, but I feel like it would help with insecurity. Yeah. With like, hearing something when it's not in its most perfect state, and then hearing it kind of get refined over time. I feel like that would have been helpful for me when I was, wondering if things were good enough to be releasing into the world, or at least, when I was in that stage.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is pretty powerful if you read any biography or you watch a documentary about how albums are made or how a band evolved, and hearing them talk about the struggles, and then also the simplicity sometimes of some of the decisions, using a karaoke machine. Yeah. I mean, when you can, like, letting people know, like, oh, I don't need to be like super advanced. I don't need to have everything figured out, and I definitely don't need all the gear.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, there's people making amazing music on iPads. There's people making amazing music, and and on my channel, that's kind of become a focus now too. Is I'm reviewing things that cost $4,000 and stuff, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, I kind of want to review something. I'd really like my next gear videos, especially now that I'm branching out into science and the gear videos have a little bit more freedom. I kind of want to do more gear videos on like, do you really need this? Mm-hmm. Or could you do it for free? Or could you do it on, your a Walmart laptop and a bunch of freeware? Could you produce something that, is as good as, something that you hear coming out of this studio with this wall of modular, all this other stuff behind you?
Right. So you mentioned the science stuff. So is that becoming more of a focus for you, not only in YouTube, but just in general?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, 5, maybe 7 years, I've been doing more freelance science work. Yeah, I would say that my channel is probably in that direction. I would like to leave the pro audio space, not because I don't like it, but because I feel like every corner's kind of already filled. I don't really know where I'm needed there, and I don't mean this in everybody tell me I'm needed. That's not where I'm going with this. But between Adam Neely and Lou Pop and Andrew Huang and Venus Theory and all of these amazing creators, it's kind of like, I'm not really needed in this space as much as maybe some science. Like when I look at the response from a question, like a deep dive into a question, like how loud can sound get, I'm way more. I feel so much more. I just feel better about making it because I feel like those are questions that the average person doesn't know the answer to, even if they are, that I didn't know the answer to it till I researched it and then made a video about it. And so I feel like that's probably where my purpose lies, or at least if that would make me happier. But YouTube's algorithm doesn't really like people being multifaceted. So it's just in the past, I've been doing science videos for 2.5 years now or something, here and there, and just in the past couple months, finally, 1 million views here, 700,000 views there, and so they were taking off a lot farther than the audio ones do. And then the good thing about that is they bring people back into this world. Then say, oh, what are the other videos? Oh, what are all these knobs? What do they do? And then, that kind of brings more, that brings more money into this space too, which helps more things get developed. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking way too optimistically about what's possible with my YouTube channel. I'm going to bring a second wave of economics into the audio gear. No, but if it brings more people into this space, that's a really good thing.
Yeah. So bringing more people into space, interesting. I want to kind of go on that. What do you think? Why do you think it's important for people to get into that space?
I think it's. I hate to say it, but looking around this room, I think we can all find that there's one major demographic of people, right? And I don't mean beards.
People who know Kanye.
Yeah, yes, people who know Kanye. No, I think that bringing modular synths, music production, it really needs to be more inviting to women, to people of color, to things like that. And I'm not saying that as a woke fest. I've done a lot of research on this and I've done videos on it. And they're from all of that research I put together, and I wish Carly could. A friend of mine ended up testing positive for COVID and couldn't come. But a friend of mine was actually a neuroscientist who worked alongside me on some of this research, and knowing that the reason why there aren't more, or at least coming to the conclusion that there aren't more female producers in this space, is not because of any biological reason, but is simply because of, if I were to say it as nice as possible, homophily. It's because we are used to seeing men using modular synths and things like that. So therefore, when we see a man doing it, we think that's right. And we see a woman doing that, we think, oh, what's her deal? And that's just what our brains kind of do, because humans, are kind of subject to being forced to homophily. So thinking outside the box, how do you correct that? Mm-hmm. And I don't know what's right or wrong. NAMM had its women's awards, which was the day before NAMM, and they wanted me to speak at that. And I was like, why do you want me to speak at your women's awards? First of all, I haven't shaved in a bit. It should be kind of obvious, that I'm not going to fit into the demographic of who you're trying to have. And then on the other side of that, the whole thing just felt weird. why do you have a separate award show for women? Like, you used to have like baseball leagues for people of color, and you used to have like schools. Like, why are we segregating things the day before NAMM? And and I was also at the Tech Awards, which seemed like the real awards, and then you had the Woman Awards on the Thursday. And I think things like that are bullshit. And I don't know. I wasn't a fan of Muff Wiggler. I wasn't the name. I wasn't a fan of Gear Sluts. I was very preachy about that stuff, and I'm really glad that at least got forward, because people would fight back a lot over the years. But in Chicago, I had a nonprofit music school, and we had like 14-year-old girls who wanted to get into synths, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, just go to Muff Wiggler and Gear Sluts, and you'll find everything that you want." It's just it was just silly. So, very long-winded answer to the question. I think that bringing more people into the space is a really good thing, because I feel like the space is kind of capped out with the demographic that's in it, and also, I mean, if you had an equalized demographic, you're literally adding 51%. Yeah. Which is like, imagine how many more synths could be made. Imagine how cheaper they could be. Yep. Imagine the party we could all have.
Yeah. Imagine how much more room we need for this.
Yeah, exactly. We'd need a bigger room. Yeah.
No, we had a lot of conversations about this in our little circle of modular synths, and I don't know if you know Travarsi from Southern California's Synth Society. She started, her and her partner did frequency shift during COVID, and that was the whole point, to like have a more welcoming thing. But one of the things that she had trouble with, that I was having trouble with too, was just finding women to be a part of it. We kind of also saw that trend where they're not on Muff Wiggler. They're not even on,
Can you believe that women wouldn't go hang out on Muff Wiggler?
We said you're welcome.
Yeah.
And that's what we figured. Like, it didn't seem welcoming.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like a room you would want to go and hang out in. And then the other thing was, a lot of groups were just totally defaulting on, we're welcome to everyone. But that's not enough. And so having to like track down people, send them a polite message. And then that's a whole thing especially for men, to like reach out to a woman and be like, "Hey, you want to be a part of something?" And they're like, they have to have I get it. I get it. Yeah.
100%. I get that. And that was, I guess, to like kill the vibe in the room for a good reason. Like, when I made the video on why are there so few women in music production, one of the harrowing statistics that I gathered just by creating my own polls, was that, I don't remember the exact number, but it was a very high number. It was over half of women had at some point lost an opportunity, whether it be like a booking agent or a collaborator, because they would not sleep with them. Mm-hmm. And that's like, sorry for the language, if that's fucked. Like, I can't even imagine. Can you imagine it? Like, I assume most people in here are musicians or modular synth enthusiasts, and can you imagine like it's already emotional enough to like work on this stuff and be like, oh, is it good enough? Is it as good as is it good enough to make the cut? But then divide that with like, I don't know if this is good or if I'm just sexually desirable to the person telling me it's good. Like that, I can't even fathom how you could get over that hurdle. And like, whatever. As cheesy as it sounds, I look up to anybody who can. Like, because I couldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to do it, and I feel like I have really thick skin. And so hats off.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I know I'm only bringing it up because I know you've talked about it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think it's totally worth, and I don't think we're gonna have all the answers today. At least that's not. Yeah. I think
if we're not solving this,
what are we doing? Yeah. Let's go. Let's wrap it up, boys.
No, yeah, a lot of synth. There's a lot of companies who reach out to me and they're like, "We want to be more friendly to, we want to help with this," and I'm like, I don't know what to do. You can't make decisions for another demographic, or makes decisions for a demographic of people that you are not part of, but at the same time you can't ignore it. And honestly, one of the weird, I'm not going to name any companies' names because I don't know if they want it being public, but some companies just send stuff to women. And by my advice. I'm just like, here's a list of female musicians. If you have extra stuff, if you want that tax write-off, send them some gear. Do it, because like with no strings attached.
Yeah.
And it sounds like anybody who's not a woman hearing that, they're like, well, well, what about me? I want some gear. But this goes right back to homophily, because like 1 out of 3 of them is going to post something they made on this piece of gear to Instagram, and it's just going to pair. It's going to couple women and synthesizers, or women in music production more, and then hopefully, a couple generations down the line, homophily will kick in, and we will recognize, women and synthesizers as not an odd thing to see, or not something to neg, or all the things that we do when or all the things that men tend to do when they see that, at least before they understand the consequences of it.
Yeah. Do you think people are reaching out to you because you are pretty outspoken about? Well, you have strong views about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think?
I can't think of one right now, but I'm sure.
Yeah. No, I don't know.
I mean, do you feel like you're like, why are you guys coming to me?
No. I understand that, like, in a divisive opinions divide, and if you have a company, or if you have a channel, or if you have a brand, and a lot of people use me as their shield for like divisive things. But I'm okay with that. I think I've always been kind of, I don't know. I'm okay with conflict, I guess. Like I don't seem to have a problem disagreeing with somebody. Obviously, I do if it's a toxic conversation or something that's not going anywhere. I don't like to participate in that. But I think that these kind of conversations have to happen. And if there's people in the chat right now, calling me a white knight or whatever, sure, who cares? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I see a lot of comments that say show or hide, which means that there's a lot of bad things in it.
Yeah, we might be.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Have fun, guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's a free show. That kind of threw me off. What was it? Okay. So let me ask. I got an idea. Why don't I read some of the questions people are asking before it gets much later and we get kicked out of here?
Yeah.
So here, I'll read some of the top ones. There was a couple I think we kind of covered in here. Like there's at least 5 in here that are about Kanye, one about Barack. So I guess that story's gotten around. Let's see. Do you plan on fighting Sam Hyde or fighting anymore?
Is that it? Just do I plan on fighting anymore?
Yeah, you.
I used to do boxing and MMA.
The funny thing is, like, I did not know that about you, but I guess you were telling me.
Like most people, when they get close enough to my face, they're like, "Oh yeah, you've been hit a lot."
If you didn't see the last live stream, you were talking about being knocked out and stuff, and that was funny to see Jamie Liddell asking you about being knocked out. That was like not on my bingo card. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah, he was quite interested in like how the brain works.
Well,
yeah. Well, you know what? That happened. I was talking to him a few days previous to that, and he said something like, he was like, "Hey, didn't you used to fight? I remember, right? I think I saw you with a black eye one, this and that."
You were about to do his accent. I felt like you were just about to do it.
But I know the repercussions.
I felt it.
I know the repercussions you get from British people if you try to impersonate their accent. Yeah.
Sorry.
So Jamie was like, "You used to fight, sir." Yeah. No. But he. And I told him, he was saying that he likes watching old Tyson fights, and I was like, "Oh, you should watch Canelo. You should watch I gave him this little list of like fights to watch, and then right before we went live from the Perfect Circuit stream, he was just like, "Oh, I watched tons of Canelo. Oh my God," and this and that, and so I think he was already like had knockouts in the brain or something. Well, that's a weird choice of words.
Good song title.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, what was the question? Oh, Sam Hyde. No, Sam Hyde was so there's a creator clash, which iDubbbz, YouTuber, put together, and it was very unlike Jake Paul's YouTube boxing events and stuff, where people were actually training and taking it very seriously, and they weren't trash talking each other, and it was all for charity. Nobody was keeping any of the money. And so I was a big fan of that, and having been professionally sanctioned before as a boxer and MMA fighter, I was like, can I get involved? But they were like, no, because you've been professionally sanctioned before and this is an amateur event. You would need a professional, somebody like, so in Florida where this event was happening, a professionally sanctioned fighter at any point cannot fight an amateur fighter. Like you both have to, which makes sense, but maybe not in my case because I'm old and have forgotten.
I mean, it
everything.
makes sense,
Yeah.
but I feel like in Florida that would have been something that wouldn't be a rule.
Right, yeah. Like in Florida,
can't
they could
fight
be like,
that
look,
alligator
if you're
or
outside of a
crocodile,
gas
that
station,
alligator."
it's fine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So Sam, anybody who's familiar with Sam Hyde, and I'm going to move on from this really quick because he's like, he's kind of like Donald Trump, where it's like the more you pay attention to him, the more powerful he gets.
Yeah.
He's just a troll who's calling out a bunch of people, and he's a giant troll. He's like 6'5" or something, and he apparently, allegedly, he's been professionally sanctioned before, even though he hasn't actually fought. So he was like he's bullying people, calling them out, calling a bunch of names, and I said, no, I'll fight him. Like I'll do it. That's fine. And put on some extra weight so I could like get up into the heavyweight weight class. And he, for the first time in his career, he disappeared from the internet for like 2 weeks because I actually got the contract and posted it, and it turns out he's not fighting anybody. But the event was still great. It raised tons of money for charity, and now they're doing more. So yeah. If anybody's professionally sanctioned and wants to make money, wants to punch me in the face and help charity.
We are going to meet up over at get some drinks later, so then after a while,
Break a bottle over my head,
get
whatever
a
you want.
few underground fights in the alley
Yeah.
going. So,
But no, other than that, I don't plan on fighting anymore.
Okay,
I'm
good.
42.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, after hearing your stories about being knocked out, I'm like, no, don't do that.
It's been a wild week of streams.
Exactly. How many things have you said out loud that you'd be like, did I say that?
Yeah, that's every day anyway.
Did you go to school for music or just science? What is your take on music education in 2022 for somebody considering it?
I feel like the electricity is going to go off in this space. I dropped out of high school. At one point, I got a scholarship to go to college at University of Montana for classical guitar, and they found out that I played backwards and then took it away.
No way.
And I was going to like get my GED once accepted and then go do that. I dropped out of high school generally because I didn't like school, but also I think I would have had to go 5 years no matter what because they didn't have enough like teachers to like get people out in 4 years, which looks great to any college. Like Harvard loves the 5-6 year high schoolers.
Yeah, they're always asking for it.
Yeah,
I see TV.
And so Kanye went and did his thing, and then me. So I and I couldn't get a student loan because back in the day, believe it or not. I think this ended with the Bush administration, or the second Bush administration. If you had any drug charge whatsoever, weed, anything, you couldn't get a student loan. So which makes so much sense, right? Like, oh, this kid's had a little bit of trouble. Let's make sure that they don't go to college. Like, So.
Yeah.
But it all worked out.
Yeah.
I'm fine. But getting hired as a scientist when dropping out of high school is kind of like, all right. For the other question, filmmaking, I've been to a lot of music schools, art schools. I've spoken at quite a few of them. I've even done like courses, not courses, but I've done like 2-week-long, workshops on things like that, especially during COVID, when like every college was like, we need as many special guests as we can have. I don't know. I think that like we have a really big problem, and I guess here's a hot take that a lot of people aren't probably going to like, but like I think when we get to the point where we have to subsidize student loans, I think that like we maybe have a bigger problem that we need to tackle other than throwing money at something.
Yeah.
And I realize that a lot of people in this room and a lot of people watching me on the stream are in student debt, and I think that that's terrible, and being in debt's horrible and it's crippling, but at the same time, I guess coming as somebody who dropped out of high school, surrounded by people who dropped out of high school, when you tax those people, and I'm not saying about me, I'm fine paying taxes. I make enough money to where I should be paying high taxes. I think that, but for a lot of people, them paying taxes to subsidize the college education of people who actually went to college is pretty classist and pretty it's not. I just don't think it's a good solution. I think we should find a solution that's not that. Like maybe actually getting more involved with schools and how much they charge in tuition, things like that. But I can't speak with any level of expertise because I never went to college. So like I don't even know. People are like, oh, I don't come Magnus from this. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I don't even understand most of the stuff. So, yeah, that's my take on it, I guess. If you think that music school will inspire you, then go for it. And if you have the means to do it, then go for it. Film school, they teach you a lot of good things, I suppose, in terms of like, I know that like there's a lot of rules, like the 180 rule and things like that in filming that like, I picked up from, I guess I learned it from the internet. I don't know. I don't really have a take on this. Yeah. I'm like, but yeah, I think if you're the type of person who works well in a group, then I suppose go for it. Or if you need that push and you can afford it, then do it. But
Funny thing, I went to film school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. What do you?
I wouldn't have people go to film school.
Okay. Well, there you go.
No, I mean, I think it is. There is, I think it's right for somebody. Yeah. But it's not right for everyone.
I think it may have been more right for people 20 years ago when you had to actually have a place to cut 8mm film and things like that. Whereas now, you could spend $400 and.
Well, yeah, your phone will,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think watching films will teach you about it. Kind of like listening to music.
Yeah. True.
To a certain degree. But if you're going, see it through. I guess I don't know. Well, no one's asking me. Nobody on your stream cares what I think. They're like, shut up. Okay, I'll ask like two more real quick. I'm trying to find ones that aren't so hot takes. There's one on here. I'm on NFTs, and if you don't mind, I won't ask it.
No, go for it, man.
I just don't like NFTs. So
I'm full of hot takes.
Okay, well let's do something more musical because some people might dig the music stuff. Okay, so do you more so like to plan out a track? Example, chords, arrangement, structure, or just stay in the moment and create as you go?
Both. Yeah, I would say it's like right down the line. Sometimes I have an idea that I'll just sort of have in my head, like on a trip like this or something, and then I'll come home and, once I have time, then I'll sort of hash it out. And other times, I would say the best tracks are ones where I'm just kind of flowing and, just playing along with something. And those aren't going to be the most challenging, like melodically or something, but those are probably the ones that sound the best. And, I guess whatever the ultimate goal is, give people chills. If that's the ultimate goal, then those are probably the ones that are going to do that.
Yeah. So do you, what's your stand on people learning music theory?
If you plan on communicating music to other musicians, yeah, I guess if you are going to write music for an orchestra someday, if you think that that's in your near future, which who the hell has that in their near future? But I kind of learned. I mean, I learned how to read charts and basic sight reading when I was younger, just with jazz and stuff. But I definitely had to do a crash course when writing for an orchestra, because you don't really know. Like, oh yeah, a harp is really hard to write for. A flute, obviously has a register that's different. Honestly, one of the first times I wrote for an orchestra, I forgot that like wind instruments had to breathe. So I just had these like super long things, and they're like, "Dude, we can't play."
People are passing out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, a lot of expensive lessons, but. Yeah, I would say otherwise no, because this isn't my hot take. This is Adam Neely's hot take. He has a lot to say about music theory that's really worth listening to in regards to how it completely and utterly just kind of pulls the rug out from Eastern music and other things like that. Mm-hmm. The idea of like writing, and I've done it, the idea of writing a song from beginning to end in theory is pretty boring. Right? Like I don't know. Yeah, you can only describe so much, and I think one of my bigger problems with music theory is, or I guess sort of the rule set that comes with music theory, and the circle of fifths and all these other things, is that we have this idea in Western music at least, and I only say that because I'm not familiar with every type of music to this degree, but we have this idea that like there are incompatible notes. Like, you can't play this scale with this chord. And it's like, if you want to, and if you feel it, you absolutely can. And like, listen to Herbie Hancock and transcribe some of that stuff and tell me that you can't play. Or listen to Giant Steps. Like, the whole thing's like an abomination to music theory.
Yeah.
And you know, and he wrote it with like an astrology chart. You know, it's like, to
So,
this
yeah.
day, one of the most iconic things ever written. And it's kind of like the boss level for every musician to play. And so, yeah, so I mean, to like break something down into music theory, it's a little silly. And really, if you just play your instrument and learn it your own way, and obviously sometimes you could find maybe chord breakdowns, and learning other people's songs can help you with new ideas, I suppose. But
Yeah. What about like microtonal stuff? Are you? What's your vibe on? What you vibing on microtonal?
I got a real hot take on the
Sick.
microtonal.
Here it comes, everybody.
Yeah, watch out. Microtonal music is. If you like search microtonal music, and just search it and listen to it, it's pretty shitty, isn't it? Like, it's just kind of like, let's make some microtones for the hell of it. But if you go a little bit out of tune sometimes, with particular, and I was kind of thinking about this at WMD because I was talking about like having a different, like, what if you set up a different filter for each oscillator,
Yeah.
you know, things like that. And it's like, man, because I've done that where I've like set up a poly synth with a modular synth, like essentially set up like a 4-voice or 6-voice, and then just took the tune 1, you know, off by a few cents, and that's the difference between like hearing a decent melody and one that you cry to, like, you know. And I guess you could say that like playing the guitar is kind of microtonal because you're bending strings, and vibrato is kind of microtonal, isn't it? And so, yeah, I mean, I think if you're just like, I'm going to sit down and write a track in between the notes, it's probably going to sound like dog shit. But I think that if you are using inflection, you know who, because I'm going all over the place, you know who Gustavo Santaolalla is? He did he did like the score for Brokeback Mountain, which, you know, some of my friends were like, yep, he got paid $3 million to play the guitar for you know, in a slow thing. But when you listen to that, it is so incredibly gorgeous because of the vibrato and like the way he's shredding the chords and stuff. Even though it's the simplest thing you could play on the guitar, it makes you cry when you watch the movie, you know, or when you listen to the score. So, yeah. They're important, but I feel like it's not as if our chromatic musical system is made from, you know, it's not as if a bunch of people just decided that those would be the notes and then everybody follows. I mean, if you take one of those little tube, like a vacuum tube, and spin it, like it'll play the Jeopardy theme song. Like it's in nature. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you know Synth DIY guy Kinkas. He was talking about microtonal, and he was saying that we're just kind of in the stone age of microtonal music. Like we're still like learning it and learning to listen to it. Yeah,
and I think it's funny that like we sort of think of it as this like advanced technique that you kind of graduate to. But I mean, if you listen to Turkish music or Romani music or, you know, anything like that, it's like completely batshit in the world of microtones, and they make it sound good. And I think it's because of that, like those subtle inflections in it. Yeah.
Familiar with Wendy Carlos' Beauty and the Beast album?
Someone's asking him if he's familiar with the Wendy Carlos Beauty and the Beast album.
Vaguely, I am though.
Check it out. It's not on Spotify. It's not anywhere online.
Okay.
But it's gorgeous. It's all microtonal.
Huh.
Groundbreaking music. Will make you cry.
It's
Okay.
So you can't find it, but when you find it,
Yeah.
Wendy Carlos' website.
Oh,
Okay,
Go
from
Wendy, go to Wendy Carlos'
Wendy Carlos' website. Yeah. I think I may have a copy of it just in that that aforementioned music library thing, because soundtracks often sort of went on my radar with that.
Yeah. Because you were mentioning something about generative music, and it made me think, well, maybe he's into like experimental music.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's weird to take any form of art and be like, this is experimental and this is not, or, you know, this is, because it's like everything's kind of, you're just kind of stirring stuff into a pot and seeing if it tastes good at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. I mean,
I feel like
millions
if
of fish fans agree.
I feel like if I put that in my head, if I sit down, I'm like, I am an experimental artist. It sometimes, sometimes like good experimental music or good like left field music or whatever you want to call it. Like, so I feel like a lot of electronic musicians, they would like listen to Audacre and be like, so this is the threshold for me, and then not actually know what Audacre was accomplishing, and then just be like, I programmed a drum machine at 7/8. I'm Audacre,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, that sucks. But yeah, so it's interesting. But this is something that I tell every musician, like, understand that, like, when you hear other artists, I mean, this goes off topic a bit, but when you hear other artists, like, you're often listening to it with a cognitive bias, and you're comparing your best moment to something that they might not consider their best moment and stuff, and try not to be competitive with other musicians because it's a subjective thing. And so I feel like the word experimental gets kind of, I used to just get really aggravated because in Chicago you'd have like experimental jazz night, and it'd just be like some guy like punching a synthesizer, and you'd be like, oh wow, so advanced. Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah.
I'm glad you saw my show.
Yeah. Free jazz.
That's weird. You didn't remember me.
Right.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I always tell people just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. Yeah.
No.
It's subjective.
It could totally be good, but just not what you like.
Right. Yeah. It's like wine or something, right?
Yeah, totally. Speaking of wine, we should wrap this up so we can grab a drink.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, there was
from that that are good?
there's a couple in here. You saw some of these questions. Were anything that kind of popped out to you? I mean, there's stuff like, what do you look for in a synth?
UI, honestly.
So wait, you mentioned about being a consultant. Do you have like, do you want to make like a module or a synth of your own? Is that like on your quest?
Nothing that I've named yet, but I have some boards. Yeah.
Oh, you got a couple boards.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. And as far as consultant, I'm trying to, like, a lot of stuff's buried in NDAs, but I mean, companies, I think they hit me up, and I've heard enough complaints and things from people just from my channel, but also, a lot of companies, they'll have like an early prototype or something, and they'll say, what do you think? And I'm sure I'm not the only person they're doing this. Not like every company is like talking to Ben Jordan about that, but they talk to Kanye too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they get a hold of them.
Yeah. No. Some companies they reach out to some people that they consult with, and usually it's like a small paid gig, and they'll say, well, what do you think? How could this improve? And I usually give them an idea, and they're like, nah.
Is there like a synth or a drum machine or a plugin even that's like, that is what I'm talking about, UI wise?
Oh man, the Poly and Play, like straight up. I wish they were like. I wish I was a couple months in the future to where you could like go to a synth store and play with one right now, because I think there's like 5 in existence at the moment.
Yeah.
But if you watch one of my video, I did a video on that recently, and absolutely, like sit down, you learn maybe just a minute's worth of knowledge on what you're doing, and then you're 20% done with the track.
Wow. Okay.
And
cool.
and you already have an idea, and they're incredible developers. Like in terms of they put a lot of thought into their interface. They put a lot of thought into like, what does this mean for a musician, and whether it's a beginner or an advanced musician, how will this get them finished with a song? And they do an incredible job at that. And I couldn't be more stoked.
So is your tracker just collecting dust right
Works
now?
with the tracker.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, I used the tracker as the synth, not the sequencer.
Nice.
And I was just like, oh, I have this granular synth all of a sudden.
Nice.
And so, yeah.
And you're traveling around with that right now?
Yeah, they're not here. They're in my hotel, and I'm not telling anyone which hotel it is.
Yeah.
You're not going to know.
Yeah.
But, nobody's getting my Poly and stuff. I have them. I have both of them in a bag. So.
Oh, sweet. Sweet. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here real quick. Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have my glasses on, so I'm now legally
Same.
legal blind. Scream it out, and then I'll repeat it for the stream.
Okay.
I was just wondering, because you have that nonprofit in Chicago with teaching.
Yeah.
I teach at a local justice high school, and it's a production class.
Mhm.
Like 75% of the time, I have a female student. They just sing. Did you experienced that? Like,
So someone's asking.
Repeat that one.
Yeah.
have answers.
No,
Yeah,
I have it. Yeah. So the question was from a gentleman who teaches music production, and 70% of the females in his music production class just sing. I was at a jazz music festival in Miami. It was like the first time I went to a show on purpose in a long time, and I mean it was filled with filled with plenty of acts. And I noticed that every single female that I saw, and the only females I saw on stage were singing, and that's all they were doing. And I actually just asked a friend this, like at NAMM. I was like, "What do you think of it?" It was a female musician who sings, who does electronic music and sings. And I was like, "Why? Why is this? Why are men more likely to, why do you think more men are less likely to sing over their electronic music, and women are?" That seems to be the default, and nobody has an answer. I mean, I don't think there is like a good answer, but Jordan Peterson. Oh, I'm sure Jordan Peterson does. Yeah. Well, we have more in common with lobsters than other women. Yeah. I have no idea. I don't really know.
I mean,
but
it kind of sounds like what you were talking about earlier. Like if that's what people see, that's the perception. So if you're gonna go into music and you're like,
yeah.
We celebrate, Whitney Houston, whoever, right? Like that's what's being put in front.
That and I feel like when I did do that women in music video, when I was doing the research phase, I talked to somebody who wrote a paper. It was this woman who wrote a paper about basically just did a huge amount of research into what instruments women are led to play. Like women are typically going to be your violinists and cellists and pianists, and men are going to be your guitarists and drummers. And I suppose that could have a lot to do with it too. Is like, well, you're a girl, so you got to sing. You got a lovely singing voice, and the man can be the virtuoso expert at the And it's in that conversation, that like group chat that I had at NAMM about this. Somebody brought up the topic of like, well, orchestras are really diverse. Like, and I was like, yeah, how many people do you see doing this who are female in orchestras? It's always some old white guy. And so,
It's the same things with minorities as well.
Right,
It's the
yeah.
same thing. Like they're like, oh wow, a black guy playing heavy metal. That's kind of crazy. Like,
right, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because then you hear so many comments like that too, where where people, I don't know, like I've heard comments like that from my friends who are black, who would then refer to it as that kind of like person of color or something, like as if like it's very hazy, and it's weird because I recognize that there's a limit in which I can talk about these things because of my race and gender. Like these things are like I don't have the experiences of. I don't have the bad experiences that a lot of these people have, and I can't really speak on. All I can do is like draw as much attention to it as I can from my platform, and I could be like, hey, fellow white guys, what do you think? Let's maybe pay more attention to this. That's about as far as I could go with it, because otherwise it is pretty ignorant and mansplaining and terrible.
So here's the thing that I've heard people kind of say when these conversations come up, like, hey man, I just want to listen to music, I want to get into gear and just escape from this stuff. What's your answer, or what's your reply to when people just like don't want to get into it? They just want to like focus on music or gear.
I mean, I'm sorry. It's just kind of a ridiculous thing to be. You know what? Look, I know I'm a well-off white guy who bought this wall of Modular, but I just want to step outside of this whole racist and sexist thing and classist thing and just play with my modular synth. All right? It's kind of a weird, like, well, yeah, of course you do. Like, but I understand.
Because you can, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not, I don't want anybody, nobody's asking anybody to like cry about sexism in front of their modular, but like at the same time, it's like it's gaslighting when somebody says that, like, I just want to enjoy my own. It's like, then go enjoy it. Nobody's telling you can't. Like, nobody's Yeah, I mean, I felt like I heard that more when I made the video about Behringer than I did anything else. Where it's just like, I just want to enjoy my gear, and it's like, well, enjoy it. I told you in the video that it's totally fair that you bought something that's inexpensive and you enjoy it. Like that's where they are valuable. They're not valuable in their behavior. And other than that, like that's where they make the Behringer owner look like an asshole when like the Behringer owner just bought a synthesizer they could afford, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
I guess to give a nugget to people out there who do just want to talk about gear, then how do you feel about teenage engineering right now?
I'm kind of.
The whole room just. we got more grunts from that than any of the other things.
We talked about racism. We talked about sexism.
That's how cool Colorado is, man.
We mentioned teenage engineering, and everybody's like, "Ooh, hold on."
Did you say TX6?
Everybody turn off your phone. Yeah. I mean.
Even you were kind of
don't buy it. Like that. That's the best thing is like you have a lot of power. You have purchasing power. You have power over these things. If everybody's like, this thing's too fucking expensive, I'm not going to buy it, then guess what? They're not going to do it anymore because they won't make any money. Other than that, I have a friend who bought the mixer, who bought the Matchbox $1,000 $1,200 Matchbox mixer, and he is a chiptune musician who makes everything on a tiny tracker, and and sometimes he'll use an actual Game Boy. And he said to me, "I've been waiting my whole life for this."
Wow.
So sure, I've spent dumb amounts of money on gear before, so that makes sense. Fine. I guess I don't really. I'm not going to jump completely on the hate wagon there, but their office does have a bunch of like vintage Lamborghinis in it, which is kind of like like if you you could just put, like a Hyundai Escort in your office instead if you want to not seem like such assholes about it. No, I don't know. They're clearly trying to be the Gucci of electronic. You could tell that they're doing that. They're pricing themselves that way, and there's validity to that. I don't really subscribe to it, but there's validity to that. It reminds me a bit when, if anybody remembers the old Google Nexus phones, when and they were like super powerful and they're like awesome Android phones, and then iPhones were out at the same time. And I remember one year, I think it was the Nexus 5. It was extremely powerful, and Google said everybody should be able to afford the best phone that we have, and that was that was basically before the Pixel came out. They had the Nexus, and I think it cost $350. Or maybe, I think $350, and that year Apple, their base price for the iPhone went up to $700, and people were like, $700, that's crazy, and $300. They got destroyed. It nearly killed the Nexus line. Like Nexus only had one more release after that with Google. Google then went on to the Pixel, which they priced premium. The reason for this is because people would say, this phone costs $700, this one costs $350. They would even look at the specs, but they would say, well, then this one's twice as good as that one. And teenage engineering is probably trying to. They probably opened an economics book and were like, maybe we could sell our synths for twice as much and be seen as the premium synth company. When I don't know, I haven't opened up an Op One. I know their batteries are not the greatest. I know people are having battery issues with them, but I haven't like cracked this stuff open and like inspected the components and it's not worth it. But at the same time, if you don't want to pay that much for gear, don't. It's that easy. But I'm not going to hate on anyone for doing it. I'd love to see the chat right now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, somebody, the thing I read, the newest comment on there, the pocket operators are pretty good and affordable. Totally true.
Totally true.
I mean, you are buying like PCB boards with no cases, which is a little like, don't drop that. But I've never been that into them because, again, I don't like memorizing things, but because I'm stupid, I guess. I don't know why. But, a lot of people bought those and they really like them. So
it is amazing they have one of the cheapest things and one of the most expensive things. That's a crazy thing to do. It's like if the Lambos came out with a scooter.
I think it's I think one of the funnier things about it, or one of the things that probably have made me laugh more is just like they have like the plastic synth case, which is just literally like something you would get free from Marshalls when buying, a shirt.
And
they want what, €40 for it or something. You're just like, all right.
Yeah, the coat hanger.
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah, that's where I can't defend you. Or I think at one point they had $100 yellow sweater.
Yes. Yeah. And do you need any more evidence that they're trying to be a designer company than that? Than like, we've made
Yeah.
$100 yellow sweater for you.
That
We're a
said,
synth
someone's
company.
gonna make something really amazing on that mixer. Someone's gonna make something really amazing with that OP.
And they're going to look really good in that sweater.
They're
Yeah.
gonna look so hot in that
Yeah.
sweater.
Yep.
Literally hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions from
Any
the-
questions?
Yeah, I don't know what the
We got
time
one.
limit is.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So a little while ago, you made a video on brain-computer interface.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if you developed on the reactor patch anymore, or if you pursued that any further after the video or playing with it.
Sure. That question was about a brain control interface, was about my neurofeedback video, and if I've broken any ground on that. Yes, I have in One Direction, not the band, yeah, me in One Direction.
It's like,
have-
whoa, another name drop.
Yeah.
You know everybody,
Yeah,
man.
I put EEGs on them, and one branch of that research actually went with a company that giant company that and I've written some papers for them, and it's not turning into a product, but it's research that's worth researching more on, because neurofeedback, for anybody who's not familiar, is where you put an EEG machine on your head. Well, you don't want to do this yourself. I did. You don't want to. Trust me. Just look at how I'm behaving now, and something went terribly wrong with this experiment. So, but it's where you have an EEG helmet on your head of some sort, and you get your baseline of when you're the most focused, when you're the most calm, when you're the least anxious, or in another case when you're not having a seizure, or when you are not having a migraine, or other things that are caused that you could detect where the neuronal connections are creating a problem. And so I started out watching combat sports, and every time I left my baseline, the fight would stop, and then every time that, then I would have to go back down to my baseline. It would kind of force me to meditate, and then the fight would start again, and then my brain would have a little dopamine rush, which then creates a neuronal connection between being focused and your reward system of your brain. And so then I moved on to video games, because video games are a little more stressful and difficult to play, and so you leave your baseline more. And then finally I made a reactor patch that all the music was atonal and messy sounding, and then once you got into your zone, it would all come together and play one harmonious patch. And so you could actually use music to do that. And so I have developed a bit more on that outside of Reactor. My biggest problem right now is, and it's something that I've been wanting to dive back into, because there's been a couple new EEG headsets that have come out that don't require the good ones, they used to have to put a special kind of gel. It's basically it's called cap gel, and you put it on there, and you have to have gel in your hair and stuff, and nobody wants to do that every day. Neurofeedback requires you to do it every day in order to make these neuronal connections stronger. So I was using something called a Muse, which works pretty well, but it's not as accurate as I'd like, and it just goes up here and then down around your ear, and it could be incorporated into headphones really. And once you get it working, it works decently. And so there has been like a new generation of gel-less EEG sensors, and I really have been, so it's been getting those to communicate with whatever software it is that I'm working with or whatever I'm trying to write. The Muse used to use OSC, which was just like easy, just a outpour of data that I could use with any sort of, with Max MSP or Reactor or anything. Whereas the new ones, they all want to be proprietary, and I'm basically saying, can you not be proprietary? So can I have an API? So. It's something I want to work on. It's benefited me tremendously, I would say. Like I'm as big. I'm always on alert of the placebo effect with myself. I always think that I'm always trying to figure out if I'm imagining a symptom or a benefit of something, and that I can honestly say it's been a game changer. It's been huge. And when it comes to things like epilepsy and seizures and ADHD and things like that, I really want to see it move along. And if music can be the area that does, my biggest concern is that it's not an expensive thing that just works its way into the healthcare industry as like a $10,000 treatment. Like it can be an app and a $200 device. It could be, but I guess I just need to bitch a lot more for that to happen.
Yeah, good one. Is there someone else that have a question? Did you have a question?
Professionally, would you rather be curious or brave?
Professionally, would you rather be curious or brave?
Damn, that's a good question.
That was gonna be my question, but he stole it.
Yeah. Oh man. At this point, now that I'm elderly, I would say now that I'm like past the halfway mark, I want to say curious, but I think brave is better because like I feel like I know enough useless facts, and I just need to. Yeah, I feel like sometimes my assertiveness or as I look at the ground and I'm like, am I assertive? I'm really assertive guy.
Look him in the eye. Body language, Ben.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes my big mouth, it's gotten me into a lot of trouble, but I feel like it's also kind of broken through a bit more in ways that haven't. And there's a lot of smart people and a lot of curious people in the world, but I think that maybe if I'm to like find the one special thing, it would be my big mouth or I guess better yet, maybe it's the combat sports or maybe it's where I grew up or something. But like, I'm just not really. I'm comfortable with conflict, or I'm comfortable with. I guess I'm comfortable with debate, and I feel like sometimes, in the cases of Behringer, or if anybody's seen my Ian or Bean video or things like that, where I've sort of where it's been a little bit of a Davy and Goliath situation, I feel like the bravery probably made the world a better place for a couple artists, or in Behringer's case, a lot of children, because he ended up donating $200,000 as a result of that video. And so, that was like, wow, I can't believe that was a result of me bitching at a camera,
Yeah, pretty powerful. Pretty awesome. Yeah. Pretty awesome. Anybody else have a question? There we go.
These days, coming out of the pandemic, do you look for local collaborators, or are you, given your YouTube and your reach, are you pretty happy finding people remotely to collaborate with?
Yeah, the question was after COVID, if I look for local or remote collaborators. I'm not the best musical collaborator. I'm pretty like 90% or 10%. A great Nicola Claudine is a really, really talented jazz musician from the UK, and she came to the United States to like essentially just hang up and work on stuff and work on some jazz stuff, and like literally like we got some sessions recorded, and like there are other people involved and stuff. We got some sessions recorded, and then I just kind of anything that I wrote from that session, I just kind of like turned into something else and recorded it myself. And and I felt bad about it, but I feel like that's kind of I'm either 90% or 10%. It's a weird way. So musically, it's very rare that I get a successful collaboration. I don't know why, but I am starting to do things like. I'm really into incubating. For anybody who's into that or who knows what that is, distant future, I'd really like to buy a plot of land somewhere in New Mexico, somewhere like that, and set up offices for people who have good ideas. Like let's say it was somebody who wanted to create a neurofeedback helmet that could cost under $500, and for a small portion of their ownership of their company, I would provide them with the resources that they need to get it going in terms of like an office and everything else. And then also, there's a lot of brands that want me to, that want to sponsor things that there's nothing wrong with them. They're just not a good fit for my channel at all. And so I'm starting to think more seriously about incubating other creators who are trying to be are starting a YouTube channel and starting a music career, and kind of telling these brands like, hey, getting in early on this, you have a macro influencer or a micro influencer, which actually churns out better numbers than somebody who has over 100,000 subscribers or something like that. Because anything that I say about a product, any product that I say is a good product, people just assume I'm paid to do it. Whereas it's a lot more organic if you have a partnership. And some of the older partnerships that I had, like with Blackmagic Design, they make cameras. They just sent me a ton of camera gear, and I was like, this is overkill for a YouTube channel. And they're like, only if you think so. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll up the bar. And I did, and it worked great. And like, I am a total shill for for Black Magic now because they had my back.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'd love to talk to you about that later.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah.
He's asking about how he feels about AI generated music and art, and what are repercussions of that.
Yeah, my last YouTube video, I had COVID and I trained a neural network to play along with me on a disc lavaer, like robotic piano, and it at times it scared me because it kept wanting. It loved being in the upper register. It just wanted to play in the top 7 keys, and I couldn't stop it from doing so, no matter how much I trained it, because it was just an RNN, and I had no way to like insert my head into the system and be like, hey, let's go. So, and that scared me a bit because, like, having spent some time with toddlers before, if a toddler wants to like go by the window and stand on the heat vent, a toddler is going to do that. No matter how many times you tell him or her not to do it, they're going to go over there and do it. And that kind of freaked me out, like thinking about things like that, and then thinking about AI kind of behaving in the same way, like not listening to me. Does it scare me? No, because like, we're having enough trouble getting a camera with AI connected to it to recognize a cat, and something like music or film or anything like that, those I can't explain to, like, if you're a big fan of my music or if I'm a big fan of your music, we can't explain what it is that makes it good. I can't tell you, like, okay, if you sit down at the piano and just do these things, you will be making perfect, beautiful music. It just doesn't work that way. It's all from the heart, and it's from that other side of our consciousness, or I guess it's from under our consciousness somewhere where these things actually work and where this becomes a language. So we don't even understand how it works. So we can't really have a neural network do it for us. And any time that I've heard any convincingly good music that was created by a neural network or by AI, when I've sort of sniffed around a bit, marketing bullshit. Like Sony did. Has anybody here familiar with Daddy's Car? Have anybody heard this song? So like Sony trained a neural network to make songs just like the Beatles, and it's called Daddy's Car, and it's a terrible garbage song. And but I remember, like, I was like, the voice sounds kind of real, like it's almost convincing. The music, like these instruments sound pretty realistic. The song sounds boring and traditional, but okay, sure. And the lyrics sounded like really weird and out of it, and like, yeah, I mean, pretty terrible. So turns out that the vocals are actually human. It's just a French guy, so it sounded a little odd to like us, right? And the lyrics were written by this French guy who didn't speak English all that well, so that's why they sounded so odd. All the instruments were recorded, and the song was just like, they took like one bar of like generated MIDI and then just basically did what I was explaining earlier when I, jam with the modular synth, but like had a whole band do it. And then just made a press release and ended up being, having the media rant and rave about AI music is now, so when people get scared or a lot of people say things that like Spotify is making AI music to essentially steal royalties or share royalties from actual musicians. I'm just like, find me one example like that you can actually, find me one example, show me the code, show me the data set, because like I'm just not a believer yet, because I feel like it's probably one of the few things where I'm like one of the people that are the deepest in it, because I've been obsessed with AI music since I had a computer. And so like, yeah, so I'm not scared. Come at me, AI. Oh God, those are like terrible. What terrible last words, right? Before the great goo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be first. Yeah. Okay, one more question, and we really should wrap it up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the question is, how often do I find myself in a rut? And how often do I feel like, how often do I just make something and say I don't like that? So weirdly enough, I went through this phase probably starting in 2017 up until like 2 years ago, where I would make things and delete them. I got addicted to deleting them. I would like them. I would be like, oh, this is amazing. I love it. Finish the track, master it, delete it, nuke it. It just felt like a release because, it's weird. Like releasing music, at least in the traditional sense, it's like making music is like sitting in a hot tub of like warm chocolate pudding. It's this beautiful thing. And then like releasing it is like cleaning the bathroom afterwards. It's just sort of like you have to like do all this, you got to like do all the press stuff. You have to do, you have to like you have to clown yourself out. You have to tour. You have to make artwork that fits it. You have to deal with criticism. All these things. And so I don't know. It just became this really nice thing because I felt like people were maybe I just felt like it was being valued more than it should have been or something, and so it just felt good to make it and destroy it. Now, I guess I just don't really have writer's block in the traditional sense, or I don't think of it in the same way. I feel like you can always have an idea, and if the idea is not good, who cares? Like the reason you're a musician. And it's because you love making music. And if you try to become a musician because, for the women or for the money or whatever it is, none of these things are like plentiful at all in this profession. But one thing that is plentiful is expressing yourself with the language of music, and whether a track exists or doesn't exist, whether you finish it or don't finish it, or whether anyone likes it, or whether only you enjoyed the moment when you were writing it, it's still worth doing for that reason. And so, because you're a musician and you love making music. So now that we're done, go home, make some music. I don't know. Felt like a good thing to end on, right?
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much, Ben. That was awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, don't forget. Thank you also to Mike and the Lamont School of Music here at University of Denver. Shout out to all my friends at Colorado Modular Synth Society who helped.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
This amazing community you guys have here.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming down. It was really awesome to talk to you and get to know you better. I mean, you talk a lot about your feelings and stuff like that, but I think it's important for people to understand who they're watching and so I think it gives some more dynamics to their experience with you. So thank you so much for doing that, being so open.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yes, please. Anybody wants to help stack chairs or put stuff away? That would be awesome. And then I think we're gonna try to go grab a drink at Denver Beer Company.
Denver Beer, go over to Downing and go south. Denver Beer.
Go to Denver Beer, go down to Downing and South. What? Well, you guys got Google on your phones. I mean, I don't know why you guys.